And you go ahead and start the intro.
Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce, the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is going to be Von Brastler. And I get a little tongue-tied on that one. I do apologize for that. And we're going to be talking about his book, The Seven Secrets of Time Travel. But before we go into that, I want to remind everybody, if y'all want to call in and ask questions, the number is 832-632-7904. For people that are listening to this show at iTunes or somewhere, you could catch us live at www.paranormalpalace.com/test-radio. Or just go to Paranormal Palace Radio and click on the live show tab at the top. I think it says live radio to be precise. Let me take a look at that real quick. Yeah, it says live radio tab at the top, and that'll take you right to the page. And if you want to learn more about Von, you can go to his Facebook page, The Brastler. Now, I didn't find a website for you, Von. Do you happen to have one?
Well, I did. I guess the answer would be no. I built a little description about what I'm doing in my Amazon page. So there's a little picture of me and what's happening on. Like I listed this radio show event, and it's there. And then you can go to Inner Traditions. Inner Traditions is the publisher, and they have a little website, and they have some information. But I'm just too lazy to do a website, Royce. I'm sorry. There's not enough time for it, see.
Well, that plus you either have to know coding or you have to get a web page builder that just drags and drops, or one of those type of situation. And building an HTML site is very time consuming if you don't know how to use PHP and MySQL. But that's getting off into a totally different subject. So we're here to discuss time travel. And I'll be honest with you, I was telling you earlier that out-of-body time travel made a lot of sense to me, especially over technological. But I have not got the honor of reading your book yet. So I'm not exactly aware of how you go about this, but I'm pretty sure that, it's got to do with spiritual advancement in some way. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's about it. I had an earlier book called Perfect Timing, where I looked at reaching a state of timelessness, where time stops. And it seems to me that at where time stops is where time travel could begin. So I looked at people, I tried to look at people who were successful in doing time shifts or time travel. And I found a few people, and they were all people who went into deep trances or deep meditations. And you could find them in the East and the West. For instance, many Native American traditions, the Dream Walkers, and in the East you see the Sumati mystics. They go into a deep out-of-body trance where they experience timelessness, a place they describe beyond space, beyond time. And you can go forward or backward, because time really isn't fixed the way we see it. It is just an illusion.
I've read from the ancients that time was cyclical.
Yeah, that's really the answer. That's the better answer. Thank you. Time is cyclical. And I'm a theosophist, and I've studied the Eastern ways as well as Western shamanism. And I think that really it is cycles, and it is everything is cycles, and everything is circles within circles. But I think also, you have to look at, and in my book I tried to, in the very beginning, I looked at kind of like, a brief moment in time, I looked at the way that different scientists and different theologians and different philosophers and different mystics had all described time and written about time. What is time? And it's largely an illusion, but also, it's a way of as above, so below, we see the cycles of life. And like, for instance, I mean, it might seem simplistic in a sense, but in the fall, the leaves don't die. When things freeze up, in some parts of the country, it doesn't mean they're dead. It just means they're going through transition. So we're always transitioning, and nothing really dies, but it recycles, and it goes in circles within circles.
Yeah, and I believe this has I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I was just going to say, I believe that this has something to do with why the ancients used to talk about aeons, and I may be pronouncing that word wrong.
Yeah. Good point. And I looked at, I found out that Albert Einstein, in writing the special theory of relativity about time, E equals mc squared, and how profound that is. It was built upon other theories, by the way, but it continues today. His theory is very, very sound. That, he looked at, for instance, Helena Blavatsky, and she wrote The Secret Doctrine. And when poor old Albert Einstein died, his niece brought a copy of a dog-eared copy that he'd underlined, written in the margins of this very mystical book, which was an ancient mystical text based on more ancient mystical text carried out of the Himalayan mountains by ascetic brotherhoods, and it was based on the fact that everything is based on cycles, things, and so I mean there is a mystical explanation too to all of this.
Okay, I was listening, waiting for you to elaborate on that one a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I mean, where does mysticism come into play on this?
Yeah. So, it goes all the way back to a theologian of the 16th century, I think, and a mathematician as well, Geoffrey Leibniz, a German. And Lowell Leibniz was kind of a Superman of his time. He wrote on many things. He said, as above, so below. But he said, there's really two realms. There's the spirit realm above, that's God's world. I don't mean to get spiritual here, but he said there's God's world above, the spirit world. Now we might say that's the world of energy. And then there's the world below, the world of the mundane physical. This is the world where we live, which we might now call this the material world, or the world of matter. So you see there's the world of energy, the world of matter. So as light comes down and strikes us, as Einstein said, that actualizes you, and that is when you experience your instant of time. We all experience this instant of time differently. But Leibniz said that God's world was a world of perfect, energy and spirit and grace, and the world below is a world of mass, confusion, and illusion. And the Eastern say the same thing, that we live in this world of illusion, or Maya, and part of this is the idea of space and time, and matter. It really is. There's energy, and then there's energy that becomes for a moment, for a brief period, or back to your idea of eons, for a duration. It is transformed into a manifest form as manifest energy. Well, Blavatsky talked about the eons of time, and how long ice takes to melt in glaciers. There's Ice Age, there's epochs of time at aeons, and inventories, and there's ages, and civilizations come and go. I mean, theories that we've probably been through many great civilizations in this world. And all of this the real explanation, according to Blavatsky, going down to Einstein and coming out is his secret formula for time is that things take exactly as long to occur as they need. It's a matter of duration. How long does it take for a glacier to melt? How long does it take for a star to go nova? You can't just hold a watch to that, you know. It's things happen, and we measure time really in change. With exchange, there's time. So how much change occurs in our world? Very, very little. You know, in this world, there's very, very little change that goes on. There was a recent book come out, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, by a wonderful young physicist in England called Barber, Philip Barber. And he was walking along the beach and with the sun, and he's thinking about the endless time and the ocean. He's walking along the sand, at the endless sand, and he looks up, and he, just like Einstein and Tesla, you know, he looks up and he's inspired by the light, and he says, there's only one measurement of time on Earth, and that is the sun, you know. And it's so very true, you know, as light strikes you, that's what energizes you and gives you life, and that gives you this moment in time. And we live instant by instant. So Barber came up with a very elaborate theory, kind of like Leibniz. He said that we think we see a continuity of time moving forward in a linear fashion. You know, it starts at point A and goes to point B, and then it goes on and on. He said you watch a gymnast doing a gymnast routine, and the gymnast will start, and then it'll do various gyrations and maneuvers and end up on the other side of the tumbling mat. But really, your eye just snaps pictures like a single reflex camera that sees everything upside down as light strikes your eye. Light strikes the object, strikes your eye, and then it's upside down, and you put it right side up in your head, and you say, well, I have a frame here and a frame here, but you didn't see it all. You didn't take it all in. And really, how much do we take in? You know, how much change occurs? Very little change occurs. So what seemed to me the problem with living like we have control of time, which we don't in this material world of ours, is that we can affect change readily. Well, things take a long time to change. Bones take a long time to mend. You know, people take a long time to go through a recovery process. Or these poor people with addictions, it takes them a long time to recover. You know, and it's like outside of our bodies, in this other realm, this world of energy and spirit, there is the unmanifest energy of a huge potential. You know, we're limited in our realm by the great laws of physics, which hold us down. They're very restrictive. Things just don't change very fast. Things don't go very quickly. If we could go quickly, we could go 2 billion feet per second, like the speed of light. And then, in fact, we could transcend time. But physically, we cannot do that. We would burn up into a ball of pure energy. According to Mr. Einstein, you'd become pure energy if you went 2,000 feet per second, the speed of light. So the idea of crawling in a DeLorean or a time machine or something like that and going forward in time, it seems just kind of
dangerous.
Not very likely. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying it's improbable, because the physical body would just turn into energy. But the consciousness part of us that can separate, the part of us that separates during dream time, let's say, the consciousness separates. And in a state of deep meditation, you can consciously control your higher self, your higher mind, and allow it to leave the body freely, and it not restricted by the laws of physics, because it's not a physical form, and your consciousness can rise above and move freely throughout time and space. So we see examples in the East and West of people who have practiced exercises in deep meditative trances and done just this. They've experienced places and times and events and worlds within worlds through their controlling their consciousness. So it seems kind of far out in a way, and yet it's something quite possible for all of us to do. And I've been doing some workshops like this, and everybody picks it up quite easily. Because these are like meditation techniques.
Right. Well, I got a question on that. Can somebody actually do this time travel thing out of body without even trying to or even knowing they're doing it and mistake it for a dream while they're asleep?
Yeah, that's a good question, Royce. Well, you know, a lot of people experience time slips. Now, I describe in my book the first one that happened to me. Well, very often it will happen during an accident, like you fall, you know, like you're in a car crash, and time seems to stand still, you know, and you have all the time in the world, you know, and everything goes in slow motion. The greatest athletes can often describe things going in slow motion. They can control this. It's just incredible. Well, it happened to me when I was 12. If I could tell a little story, maybe it makes some sense why I started off on this discovery of time. I was kind of bored, and my friends and I, we decided we were going to pick berries. And there was a berry bus. It was just like a school bus, but happily it wouldn't take us to school. It would take us to the berry field. Well, we didn't want to work, but we wanted to eat some berries, and we wanted to go swimming in the river next to the berry field. We were not the best workers, but we went there, and we ate a bunch of berries, and then we went to the river, and I got sick. And I went and I was sick to my stomach. I was so sick, I felt like I was going to die. And, you know, sometimes you just know when you're just so sick that it's just not normal. I mean, it's something really critical. And something just kind of takes charge, you know, and moves you. Well, this is what happened to me. I went to the bus driver. I said, I got to get home. I'm so sick. He said, now you just wait like the rest of the kids. We'll take you all home at the end of the day. We'll just drive you right to your home. And I said, I don't think I can wait. So I see a railroad track in front of the berry field, and I tell my friends, this railroad track will take me right to my home. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, there's a railroad track right in front of my home, and I'll just follow this railroad track. He said, well, how do you know this railroad track would take you there? I said, it's just a railroad track. It just goes and goes and goes, and, you know, and then, you know, it'll work perfectly. I'll be home in no time. Now, I'm 20 miles from home, so I remember walking down the track and feeling very, very queasy, like I'm just going to pass out. And I turned and I waved to my friends, and then I round the bend. I hadn't been going very many minutes at all, and suddenly I'm in front of my house. This doesn't make any sense, but this is great. I cross the street, and I go inside, and I tell my mother I'm very, very sick. And indeed, I got to the hospital just in time. My appendix were about to burst. In fact, they were beginning to burst. And then after I came home and I went outside, I realized that the railroad tracks do not stop in front of my house. They don't come anywhere near my house. And about 6 years later, we moved to another city where those very railroad tracks stop in front of the house where we moved. I can't explain that, but it seems like it was a time shift. And I had one where I was in a car crash, and I had about 1 second to decide what to do before I either went into a guardrail or over a cliff. And it seemed like I had all the time in the world because time stopped. And I'm sure your listeners have had similar experience where they've probably been in an accident or something like an accident, some emergency, where I call it when the spirit wants to evacuate the body because it's so unsafe, and it just jumps out of the body. And then it has
literally scared the life out of them.
Yeah, it scared the life out. And when the spirit comes out of the body, well, you know, it still has this great attachment to the body, and so it has this great awareness, and it looks around, this bird's eye view, and it says, this is what it is. And it, you know, and it operates outside time and space. So like in the case of my car crash, gosh, I had time to think of like 4 or 5 different scenarios, how to stop a car that's coming down a cliff, 60 miles an hour, and I'm going to hydroplane at the bottom because there's a big, big puddle of water. And there's no way I can turn this little sports car to the left at 90 miles or 60 miles an hour, do a 90-degree turn. And I'm thinking, like, what do I do? And it's like, and I had all this time to think about it. Put on the brakes, turn the wheel, crash into the thing. You know, it's like, I thought of all different things, and none of the things work. And then I just like blinked at my eyes, and I said, downshift, turn left, the wheel hard left, accelerate in first gear, catch rubber, bounce off the guardrail, and I bounced off the guardrail. And I did this wild spin. And I'm just dazed. I'm just driving around, dazed after that. And the policeman stopped me. He said, "Are you the guy that almost went through the guardrail?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you should be checked out or something. You really banged it." I said, "Did I hurt the guardrail?" He said, "Well, you just hit a glancing blow, but, you might want to get checked out." Because I was, like, really out of it. Well, then there are these time slips where people will very often, they'll come into a room and suddenly they realize it's not right. It doesn't look right. It looks like a different time period. They've never been there before. That happens. People will have a time slip, or people will have where they can't account for half an hour of time. It just was lost, just totally lost. Or suddenly time seems to accelerate. Like, where did that time go? It's like you blink and it's like an hour later. It's really, really strange. And then, and then I think that deja vu experiences where people will see somebody and say, "My gosh, I've seen you before." You probably have seen them before, but where did you see them before and when? So I think it also explains how people. Well, it could explain a lot of things. I don't know what to think about aliens and UFOs and contactees and all that. I know a lot of people get all excited. And I've seen flying saucers, and I'm not going to lose sleep about it because, they fly around their machines and I sleep in my bed and we don't seem to bother each other too much. But, it seems like, that's a way to explain a lot of things like maybe UFOs and time travel, people from maybe our future or our past coming to visit us. There are people who claim that they are getting, I don't want to really speak to mediumship, but there are people who claim to be getting communications from past
channeled
times.
messages.
Channeled messages, like they're listening to the Atlanteans. Or recently, we heard a lot of people talk about they knew people from the Mayan civilization and what they were all about, and there's supposedly a lot of people that are getting simultaneous communications from the Mayans, and it's like, time travel. I think that there is time travel, but for most of us, the time travel is done in a non-physical body. And if you think of how the Native American would do it, for instance, the shaman would go into a deep trance and go into another time and place in the spirit realm, and come back with great insights for his people. As a perfect witness, going, observing, and coming back. So how safe is this? Well, you're not going to be able to go and raid the stock market or shoot your grandfather or some of those crazy
or go
scenarios.
up in the future, get the lotto numbers for this Saturday and bring them back and then cheat.
Yeah, because you can't read. You have information, but you're like a witness. You're just there to observe. So you go with not with eyes and in the sense of smell and our normal five senses that are physical to our bodies, but in a higher consciousness you go as a with great awareness, and you have keen sense of awareness, and you observe things. And it's possible, I think, to set up real exercises where almost like people who do dream training, where you can actually do like, if you will, consciousness voyages, where you leave your body in a controlled way and you program yourself to go back to a certain time, maybe in your childhood or maybe earlier in history, just to observe things, or possibly in the future, although it's very hard to go into the future because most of us don't have a frame of reference for it. We don't have any belief, you know. It's like most of us say, well, I haven't been there yet. How can I know what my future is? I mean, that's impossible. But maybe time is looped, you know. Many scientists now are saying that time is simply looped, you know, and it goes around and around and around, and like a big wheel. And maybe we've been there before in some sense, and we're just now catching up to it now. So in a sense, we've already been there. I mean, as
been there, done that, and got
been there, done that, and come back and review it. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, most of the people that go through my workshops, they like to go into their past, and I think that's very, very helpful work, you know, therapeutically too, because you can go back and deal and observe things, like when you were a child, how you were confused or distressed about something, and you know, it reveals something and helps you, if nothing else, get closure, but it helps you to understand how things were, you know, and in that sense, I think it's very good. In the East, you know, the Samadhi mystics, they train their young ones through a series of Samadhi tests, which goes on for years and years. They first to dream, to have controlled dreams, you know, because it's very much like dreaming, and then to go into a deep sitting trance where they'll actually go somewhere. Now, when the tsunami hit southern India in Indonesia, it was about 4 years ago or something, 5 years ago, and they had to evacuate southern India. Well, a lot of these Samadhi mystics that were doing this out-of-body travel had to be moved, and they were in deep, deep trances. They couldn't just shake them and wake them up. They were gone. You know, they're in, you know, and they're in a safe place, so people would pick them up and carry them somewhere. And then when they came out of their trance, they said, "Where am I?" He said, "Well, there was a tsunami, and we moved you." And I said, "Well, thank you." But yeah, I mean, like 3 days they could be gone. You know, I mean, you know, time seems. If you think about when you dream, how very often when you have a vivid dream, a lucid dream, how 1 hour you seem so long, or even 5 minutes. You know. It seems like years and years and years in a dream world. Time goes so, you know, differently in that state of consciousness that, you know, you imagine how much they can explore in 3 days. It's just amazing.
I bet it is. But I was going to mention, we're about halfway into the show, and I thought it'd be a good time for you to kind of give some sort of a description of your book and, you know, basically a summary, you know, what it covers, etc.
Well, thank you. You're a nice host.
Thank you.
Well, well, the first part of the book, I talk about what is time, you know, and, you know, and that's been done by other people, you know, but I tried to give just a quick synopsis of, like, you know, from, you know, you start with, you know, Plato, and then you go up through Immanuel Kant, you know, and then you talk about, you know, there are a lot of different philosophers, and then there's theologians, and then you talk about the scientists, you know, like Einstein and others who work with him, and sense, and then so I talk about the different kinds of time, like there's ordinary mundane time, well, how we think of time, you know, and what it is, and how the idea of we try to control time in order to expand time. You know, we have time-saving devices. We have atomic timepieces, so we don't lose a second. But we have this funny idea that we can, by measuring things, we control it and have control over it. But it is what it is. I mean, light strikes us, and and just for that moment, you know, you come alive, you know, and that's true of all of us. So then I talk about time, and then and